South Korean authorities continue to retrieve the debris of the North Korean space rocket that fell into the West Sea. In the meantime, more rocket-related warnings came out from the north. For more on the latest on the Korean Peninsula, we're joined by Professor Park Won-gon. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning.
So, like I just mentioned, South Korean military continues its operation to salvage the rocket debris, right? Now, when it is retrieved, how much information about the rocket can we actually find out?
Well, at this moment, we don't know exactly when we can get the retrieve of the debris of the rocket. It depends on the weather conditions, and you just have a report. But it is important that it is known that they have around 15 minutes rocket remains. The total height of the Cholima-1 is 75 minutes, which means that a significant portion is under the sea. So if we, South Korea, successfully retrieve these debris, we can get the very meaningful information. First, we think that we have the PAC-2 engines, which is the most important part of North Korea's the ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missiles, the development. And they have Hwasong-15 and Hwasong-17 allegedly known that these PAC-2 engines. And Cholima-1 also used the same one, but it's more advanced and revised version. So we can get the more information about that. And second, we, of course, can get some satellite technology of the North Korea, how it advanced. And finally, we are seeing some parts and items, where they are coming from, and some of them might be a violation of the United Nations Security Council resolutions. And year 2012 and 2016, South Korea have experienced to retrieve the debris of the rocket and getting some very meaningful information.
Right, the rocket itself and also the engine can really speak about how far North Korea has come in space technology. Now, in the meantime, North Korean leader sister Kim Yo-jong once again spoke up. She threatened not to notify the International Maritime Organization when launching a space rocket in the future. Now, the North argues that the international community's treatment of the North over this issue is not fair. Professor Park, what's your take on this?
Well, it's Kim Yo-jong and of course, sister of Kim Jong-un. And she has mentioned the so-called unfairness of the international community that just blame the North Korea. She has started this kind of argument, so-called double standard argument, like 2 years ago. And North Korea, the argument is very straightforward. North Korea said that the weapon development is not different from the other countries, such as South Korea and United States. So it's very totally legal and legitimate. And that's their main argument. So North Korea say that the international community, especially South Korea and United States, should not put the North Korea in the violation of any things. It's a so-called double standard. And second one is that Kim Yo-jong issued this kind of a statement is to give some reasoning and rationale for China and Russia. And of course, those two countries has defended North Korea in United Nations Security Council since the last year. So it should give us some reasoning. And also, you just mentioned that North Korea has announced that they are not going to notify the international IMO, International Maritime Organization, for their next launch. At this moment, I'm not sure whether they are not going to also notify to Japan, which is in the route. And if North Korea decides not to notify Japan, it's going to be a really huge tension and alert and in this region, because it can be, anytime North Korea can launch this rocket, and it will be a very serious security threat to Japan and in some sense South Korea too.
Right. Speaking of notifying the IMO and Japan, we have to talk about the second rocket-carrying satellite, right? When do you think North Korea will actually do so? I mean, should we be expecting one this week? I mean, if it is, why? And from which site this time then?
Well, I think it is very unlikely to launch this week, even though North Korea said that they notified to IMO and Japan is until 11th of this month, because North Korea themselves mentioned the couple of things of why they failed this rocket launch. And they are saying that because of the instability in the engine and fuel system. You see, engine and fuel system, if those two are the problematic, and it means that the whole rocket has a very serious problem. So usually it takes several months and even a year to repair and to see the problems. For example, in year 2012, April, at that time, North Korea has failed to launch the satellite, and it took 8 months to have a second launch, and they said finally they are successful. But we have not included the possibility to the launch missile in a short period of time because North Korea have a very different route to develop their missiles and weapons. And also, it is Kim Jong-un's very prioritized project. And so I mean that it can be some political reason that North Korea will have a second trial in the very short period of time.
Right, but nonetheless, an emergency UN Security Council meeting did take place over the spy satellite. But of course, this time again, it ended with a no fruitful outcome due to the opposition from China and Russia, as usual now. Will there be any tangible countermeasures or feedback on the global level when there's another launch?
Well, you're right. The United Nations Security Council is simply helpless and dysfunction for the past couple of years. And for example, the last year, March, North Korea's open withdrawal moratorium. In other words, they launched ICBM, but United Nations Security Council failed to impose any additional sanctions, even though United Nations Security Council Resolution 2397 has a so-called trigger clause. So that's why right now South Korea and United States, Japan, and some other European countries put the unilateral sanction on the North Korea. And recently, South Korea's cooperation with the United States and sanctioned North Korea's hacking organization, so-called Kim Suk-ki. So I think this kind of effort could be continued by these so-called like-minded countries, South Korea, Japan, and the United States.
Right. More unilateral sanctions from Seoul and Washington. Let's see how this goes out to the north this time. Now, thank you so much for joining us this morning, Professor Park Won-gon.
Thank you.